Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Outsmarting Obsolescence with AMSYS and SiliconExpert Lifecycle Management Client Application using API Integration, brought to you by AMSYS and SiliconExpert. I am Stacy Sakaris, and I will be your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. You can participate in today's Q&A session by asking questions at any time during this webinar. Just type your question into the Q&A text area and then click the Submit button. At this time, we also recommend you disable your pop-up blockers for a better user experience. At the end of the webinar, we will ask you to complete our feedback survey. Your feedback will provide us with valuable information on how we can improve future events. You can also launch the survey at any time by clicking on the red survey button at the bottom of the console. If you are experiencing any technical problems, please type your issue into the Q&A text area and we'll be glad to offer one-on-one assistance. Now on to the webinar. Speaking today is Bjorn Bartels, Managing Director of AMSYS, as well as Terrence Pope, Project Manager with AMSYS, and last but not least, Henry Mapier, Technical Product Manager with SiliconExpert. Without further delay, I will now hand it over to Henry.
Henry Mapier. I'm the Technical Product Manager for SiliconExpert, and I'll walk us through this. The direct integration with our API is what I'm going to be going over here. The exact implementation of it might be slightly different for you, so always make sure to check in with your technical lead or with me if you have any questions. To briefly go over what exactly an API is, it is a method by which you can communicate to anything, but when it comes to SiliconExpert specifically, it's a method by which you can communicate directly to our servers. With all other interactions with SiliconExpert data, there will be middlemen and web services and user interfaces. While the API is still a layer in between you and our server, it is what I would call the most direct access to our server that you can use. You are essentially, for those of you who understand this, you are essentially proxying a SQL query to our server. You're going to get the data as it is formatted in our server fairly accurately, and it's going to give you the data as a file that is then yours to control as you wish. The benefits of this are many. API is essentially a big toolbox. You can customize your particular solution to your needs rather than using the sort of out-of-the-box tool of the web service or of the SE Connect widget. Beyond this, the data that you access via the API is what we call persistent. It's the data file is yours. While there are legal restrictions on what you can do with the data, for instance, you can't resell it, that data fundamentally is yours to do with what you will. To give you a comparison that, an everyday human being can probably grab their heads around, if you're using our web service to access our data, you have access to that data for as long as you're looking at that web page. And the second you navigate away from the web page, your access to that data is lost unless you were to, say, export it as a file. With the API, definitionally, you're receiving that file. That file persists within your company's servers and can be used however it is that you want. This is, when it comes to SiliconExpert specifically, for those of you who don't have a large amount of understanding about SiliconExpert, we are the world's largest component database. We have over 1 billion parts. We have almost 100,000 suppliers. And while we are an industry leader in terms of sheer volume of electronic component data, we also are an industry leader in how much information you get about each individual part. We have over 300 attributes. So not only are we the most likely service to have the part that you're looking for, we are also more likely to have the data about the part that you're looking for than any of our competitors. Using the SiliconExpert API is machine readable. We have access to the largest part database in the world, more attributes per part. We have immense reliability. We have over 99.8% uptime. When we do not go down, and when we do, you generally get a warning about it at least a month in advance. We have extremely efficient calls. We have sub-second response time, and in fact, recently we did an overhaul of the servers and increased the efficiency or the speed with which our calls responded. Obviously, every client's implementation of this is different, but anecdotally, for one client in particular, it received almost a 400% efficiency increase. So that's the kind of focus that we're doing on making sure that not only do we have access to the data, that the API is responsive as quickly as possible. And the last thing that I really want to call out for anybody who's looking for a SiliconExpert API integration, obviously the flexibility and customization, the persistence of the data is useful, but beyond that, the automation of tasks is really what highlights SiliconExpert's API process as a good product to be purchased. If you're going to be doing something that requires a bespoke human interaction, like say you're an engineer and you personally want to figure out if a part is good for you, that's absolutely something that you would want to use the web service for, with its lovely user interface and excellent UI. But if you're going to say, I want to make sure that I have 100,000 parts, and I want to grab the information for each one of these 100,000 parts, and not only do I want to do that, I want to do that on a regular cadence month after month. That's something that you want to automate. That's something that you don't want a human being manually doing. And for those instances, that's where the API can just, you spend the time to write the code, you send it, and now that's a tool that can be done at the click of a button. We have pretty much, we try to make sure, I'm obviously technical product manager for the API, so I will say that one of my priorities is making sure that every piece of information that is available via the web service is available via the API as well. There are some functional differences, and in some instances, we may diverge from the web service. But for the most part, if you're able to do something on the web service, like set up an alert, get compliance data, get lifecycle data, do parametric search operations, all of that is going to be available via the API. You may need to find the bespoke API call for it, but it is available. We want to make sure that there is parity between SiliconExpert's products. And in fact, this is ever so slightly out of date, as the supply chain risk management data is in fact available now. It is what we would call the platinum version of our API. And that's something that I will allow for further sales calls if that's something that you're interested in. We have a specific call when it comes to that. We understand that we are, as a company, we charge a premium for our service. Partly that's because we're industry leaders, but the other reason is all of our competitors tend to charge per query. So while they often will advertise themselves as, you can get up to 400,000 parts for this smaller amount of money than SiliconExpert would charge you, that's deceptive wording in our opinion, because up to implies that every single query will result in a correct, retrieval of information. With regards to SiliconExpert, we don't charge per part. You can make 1 million queries a day and theoretically never actually max out your quota. And each one of those queries, if you think about it, does not actually cost you any money. The amount of money that we charge is based on how many unique parts are being accessed by the client during their contract. You can increase this quota at any point during the contract year. And this allows us to pretty directly only charge you for ultimately the data that you are going to use. This is one axis that will determine the price of the API, the amount of quota that you purchase with us. The other axis is how much data do you want about the parts that you're accessing. The two options are silver and gold. The differences are a little bit technical, but to simplify it as best I can, Gold has proprietary information that SiliconExpert has generated. Silver has data that theoretically is accessible by anybody, although obviously not in as efficient a format as if you were to have a subscription to SiliconExpert. So if you want to know if a part is operational or is obsolete, Silver has that information. But if you want to know what does SiliconExpert's algorithm, how many years do we predict this part has until it reaches its end of life? That is restricted behind gold. Do I want to know if this part is ROS compliant or not? That's silver. Do you want to know exactly the documents that prove that it is ROS compliant or not? That's restricted to gold, etc. This is just a quick breakdown of what I went over briefly, which is the difference between sort of many of our competitors and us. With our leading competitors, if you were trying to get information for the ROS compliance status, conflict mineral status, part status, estimated years to end of life, and packaging data for a particular component, that would be 5 different requests and decrement your quota 5 different times. And with SiliconExpert, we would simply check if the unique identifier for this part, for the Vishay, the BAV99 diode as manufactured by Vishay Industries, we would check to see if that COM ID had been accessed by you during your contract timeline. If it has, add it. Do not decrement your quota. If it hasn't, decrement your quota once, and then all future checks would not decrement quota. So this would ultimately decrement your quota once, as opposed to 5 different times. We also have third-party integrations with a number of different partners. This is not comprehensive. This is just cherry picking what we consider to be the biggest and best ways in which you can access SiliconExpert data through these partners. And I believe Bjorn will be following up with more information on specifically AMSYS's implementation of this partnership. If you are a client who is using one of these third-party services, I would caution that all this information I've given about how API works, it ultimately will be happening on the back end of the service that you are using. So you may not have visibility into what API calls are being made. If you are using AMSYS, for example, you will be in the AMSYS tool. The AMSYS tool will be making these API calls. So in these instances, while I'm happy to help in whatever way I can, in many instances of user experience, something seems to be going wrong or something you want changed, that's ultimately a question for the third-party service, not for SiliconExpert, as it's how the API calls are being made, not necessarily that the API calls themselves are performing a malfunction or not retrieving the data. And with that, I'll hand it over to Bjorn. Thank you very much for your time.
My name is Bjorn. I'm one of the 2 managing directors of AMSYS Applicable Management Systems. We started off in 2014 to provide best-in-class services throughout all verticals in the supply chain to different industries, being it aerospace and defense or military, within the railway and public transport section, in automotive, automation, medical, technology, as well as energy, and many, many more. Our expertise lays in lifecycle management that does consist for us in obsolescence, change, but also risk management. Since the early days, we have been at the forefront of providing best services as workshops and trainings, being it internal or external. We do conduct audits and studies for our great customer base to then develop great applicable concepts that can be implemented afterwards. We are also business partner of the Component Obsolescence Group Germany and an endorsed trainer of the International Institute of Obsolescence Management, meaning we can certify obsolescence managers. Over the years, a couple of products have been developed and evolved and have been implemented at the market. I'm going to take focus on one of our products. It's the AMSYS Lifecycle Management Client. The AMSYS Lifecycle Management Client is a customizable software application that can be tailored to your needs, to then map your individual process flows. It can be hosted on a dedicated server that is provided to you by us, but also within your own IT infrastructure behind your own firewalls. Our Lifecycle Management Client does consist out of 2 modules that I will explain in more detail later. But now, in advance, one of the modules is the Obsolescence Management module that is a case management system that purely focuses on your reactive problem-solving process. The other module is the Risk Management module for proactive risk identification, assessment, but also mitigation. What we do is we take advantage of an API integration into SiliconExpert as an external database where we fully integrate all the data that you already know and that you need into our application. Compliant not only to the SD22 DMSMS standard, but also to the International Obsolescence Management Standard IEC 62402, we do provide an interface into your supply chain, to your individual manufacturers and suppliers, and then combine it with your already existing systems, being it ERP or PLM systems, for effective products, item usage, inventory, and demands. Also with full API integrations. I want to focus a little more of the 2 modules our Lifecycle Management Clients consists of. Let's start off with the reactive approach to obsolescence management, where the focus lays in solving issues that might arise in time. The AMSYS Lifecycle Management Client Obsolescence Management module gives you the advantage that each party involved in your individual problem-solving process knows exactly what and when something needs to be done. Our focus is then that optimal results are achieved with consistent efficiency, with the capability of writing tickets and tasks to your colleagues with due dates and following them up, having an overview of all open and or closed cases and solutions all the time, meaning with all the clear structures. In each step in your obsolescence solution finding process, we track every step with full traceability to reduce your lead times from a problem arising to a solution or a combination of solutions is implemented within your organization. The overall goal is that we always provide full transparency and obviously greater team satisfaction throughout and through our automated workflows that we provide. A more proactive approach to obsolescence is when you combine likelihoods and impact for your standard compliant risk assessment and risk management approach. This is why we provide our AMSYS Lifecycle Management Client risk management modules, where all users have an up-to-date overview of the conditions of their systems. So we take lifecycle forecasts out of SiliconExpert and some other databases to then combine it to an overall likelihood at component or smallest interchangeable item level, and then bring it together with your individual impact factors on your products, being it demand or usage data, mean time between failure, because in the end, you are the one who define criticality for an item that having an impact on your products. To give it a little bit more value add, we also do provide, and the application does it, we do provide suitable resolutions that might be applicable to you, and they are proposed to overcome obsolescence issues and to mitigate your risk that you have identified proactively. The value add we provide here is obvious. We prevent unnecessary losses with early detection as well as proactive assessment and treatment of individual risk. What we need is not only data of your ERP or PLM system, but also high quality data as a solid foundation, and we take it from SiliconExpert. Within both of the modules of the lifecycle management client, being it the obsolescence module or the risk management modules, all of our customers can get the information they need natively integrated in the application. So we do take advantage of an end-to-end combination of any existing enterprise software, PLM or ERP system, and combine it with world-leading component database SiliconExpert as well as additional sources. The advantage is that you optimize your individual process flows with all the interfaces to internal and external data, and we do provide it all in one tool, the AMSYS Lifecycle Management Client. If you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to contact me anytime. Here are my contact details. Thank you so much. I also want to encourage you to punch in, if you already have any question, into the Q&A box provided in the webinar. But for now, I want to hand over to my dear colleague, our project manager, Terence, who will give you an introduction into the lifecycle management client and its capabilities. So for now, Terence, take it away.
All right, Björn. Thank you for the short overview and the insights from your end. I would like to introduce myself real quick. My name is Terence Pope and I am a project manager at AMSYS and started 2019 as a working student with focus on business administration. I've basically grown together with the application into the company and now responsible for the various projects of our customers and always try to incorporate feedback into our application to provide the best possible value. But now I think our audience has a rough overview and are also certainly excited to see how we have integrated the SiliconExpert API into our AMSYS Lifecycle Management Client. So I'm very happy to present you a live demo for the next 15 minutes. I will show you some functions of the application, but will not go into much detail. So before I start, if anyone has a question in the meantime, feel free to ask and I will catch them in the Q&A afterwards. As Björn already mentioned, our application is made up of two different modules. Before I go into the two modules and the functions, I would like to start with the simplest API integration to warm up. It's the so-called part search. Now I'm going to switch to our application. One moment, please. So in our application, this function actually is called search from component database. With this API function, we have the possibility to start a live request by just typing in the manufacturer part number you're looking for. So let's take the BAV99 as an example and just press enter or click on the search button. So, as you can see, I now get a quite long list of all parts, starting with BAV99 that are listed in SiliconExpert's database. We are getting following basic information like the manufacturing part number, the manufacturer, the designation of the item, and of course, if you want to have a look at the latest known datasheet, just click on the respective icon. And besides the current obsolescence status, I can also see if the part is RoHS compliant or not. Now I can narrow down the results a bit further and go for a specific manufacturer. So let's take Nexperia, and it's obviously that I'm looking for a part which is current status is active. So I'm setting the filter to active, and now I have an overview of all parts from Nexperia that are listed in SiliconExpert's database which are active. It depends on which process I am in and why I was looking for this part, but I can still do other actions from here. So one possible scenario would be that I would like to check if I can approve a part as a possible replacement with documentation. And of course also with the required documentation in my internal process. That's why I'm going to open a new case for a part by clicking on the respective icon. So in our application it's the icon on the right side, which means open a new case. The application automatically jumps into the obsolescence management module. By customizing the obsolescence management module, we can digitize your entire workflow process here. So please do not be confused by the various fields and tabs, because my demo version consists of a diverse mix of input options that may be relevant for your internal obsolescence management process, beside all the necessary information according to the IEC 62402. So all fields that are having this red attention icon showing me which fields are mandatory. So I'm going to fill my mandatory fields real quick. Setting a title on SiliconExpert webinar, priority on high, and I still have another mandatory field in the section item concern, so I'm going to switch to the section. And as you can see, the data that we are getting through the SiliconExpert part search API was automatically saved as well. So I could now add this part to an existing internal part number, for example, or save it as it is. And as I already mentioned, there are many more input fields that we can use here to manage the internal process in the best possible way. But since these are customized individually, I clicked through the mandatory fields as an example to illustrate this. So I'm setting the last mandatory field as an alarm, and now click on save. Once the case has been saved, the internal process can be started for this purpose. So on the left side, I can now find all the information that I have entered. On the right side, I can see the status of my case, and to keep it simple, I only have the status draft, in progress, and closed. But in general, there are a lot of more. And in the box below, I see all the actions I can do in my case. So I'm going to add a comment real quick. SiliconExpert webinar. Add this comment. I also have the possibility to add one or multiple solutions. For example, design chain, example, add the solution. And last but not least, I can manage my obsolescence management case by task management and add a task to one of my colleagues, Christina, by the end of May. Please check our existing stock. At this task, and Christina will now receive an email with a link that will take her directly to this case, and she can mark it as complete as soon as soon as she have checked it. And then I can go further through my process. But I could now have another use case where I need the part search. For example, I have approved a new replacement and I want to assign it to an existing internal ID, which is already monitored in the lifecycle management client to have it automatically tracked and updated in my risk management. So to do this, I'm going to use this function again by clicking in the navigation bar on the left side on the respective icon, search from component database. Type in the manufacturing part number, BAV99. Narrow down a little bit further by typing in the manufacturer and setting the filter. And now I'm going to add this BAV99235 to one of my existing or monitored internal part numbers. 1106. Save it. And as you can see, the part list search function can be useful for different requirements, because now this added part will be assessed in my proper risk management. As you can see, the part list search function can be useful for different requirements, because the latest added part will now be assessed in my proper risk management. But since it continues here still further from the technical aspect, I would ask you to remember this last action. I will pick up here later and show what happens next in the background. But before I do this, I would like to briefly hop to the risk management module to explain this a little bit more. Starting point is the so-called tree view, where you can upload your multi-level bombs and also can see at a glance the obsolescence status of your product, no matter how many levels or sub-assemblies it has. I'm going to explain the aggregation by using the AMSYS control unit. As you can see, the current obsolescence status and the forecast are already obsolete. If I now click on the plus, I can see which sub-assemblies my control unit consists of. In my example, my control unit consists of a total of 7 other sub-assemblies. Now to check why my sub-assembly is also obsolete, I click down one more level. Now I'm on the level of my customer part number and see that some parts have already been discontinued. But to really understand the aggregation, we have to go to the deepest level. Here we have a great example. My internal ID 1103 is still active as long as at least one or more approved alternatives are listed as active. This means on this manufacturing part number level, we are aggregating always the best status up to the customer part number level. Once we have reached the customer part number level, the aggregation turns. This means we are aggregating the worst status up to the next higher assembly. The next worst status is given by my customer part number 1104, which is obsolete, and this worst status is aggregated up to the next higher assembly, which is my assembly 1100. And from here, the aggregation, or we aggregate also the worst status up to the highest assembly, or the end product is the called AMSYS control unit, or in my example, it's the AMSYS control unit. I hope the audience could follow me. If not, please let me know, and may we have some time to further explain this in the Q&A. I had to explain the aggregation first to make it more understandable to the great future of the SiliconExpert API integration, to show what happens fully automatically in our application every night. The next function is called getPartDetails. You remember the point I told you to hold on? So now let's hop back to the point where I've added a possible alternative to my existing part number. Let's switch to the table view. Here you can see a list of all your parts which are monitored in the LCM client. Just a short overview what you see right now. The first column is your customer part number. The second column, no matter where you can see this icon has the where used function. This means if I click on the icon, I can see if this part is also used in other assemblies. And of course, the manufacturing part number, manufacturer, the current obsolescence status, and the forecast from 2 to 8 years. But let's hop back to the customer part number that I've added a possible or approved part. This was 1106, and as you can see, here is my recently added manufacturing part number, and all I can see is, or all what I get is the current obsolescence status. I'm missing the 2 to 8 years forecast, and if I'm clicking into the details of this part, I also see that I have no matching results. I have no obsolescence data besides the current obsolescence status, missing all the environmental and compliance data and the technical and further data. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn off the get part details function in the background. I'm just switching to the other display or the other monitor, and this will take a few seconds, and after this I should see all the data that I'm missing right now after refreshing my browser. So while the system is running, I'm going to refresh my browser and all the missing data should be there. So as you can see, I now have matching results, have all the obsolescence data, all the environmental data, and all the technical and further data that I was missing before. So we have also integrated the function for possible crosses by clicking on crosses and replacements, the live request starts. So here we have also some basic information like the manufacturing part number, manufacturer, obsolescence status, ROHS status, and we also have the cross type, differences, and replacement type, and also have the possibility to narrow down the results a bit further to find a specific part, and also have the possibility to export this to an Excel file or Excel sheet, or add it to an existing internal part number. This time I'm going to take another one, save this, and same producer as before. And the last function I want to show you today is the alert function. To do this, I'm going to switch to the notification center, and I will skip the general notifications and the PCN generator, but I'll go into more detail about the other notifications. Let's go to the alert center first. So here you can see at first an issue date, your internal customer part number, again the where used function, the manufacturing part number and manufacturer, and you can see over here status changes as from to. So that means you are daily up to date and can check daily your alert center, or do this with all the change notifications. If you are using the change alerts, we have implemented another cool function. So all the categorized PCNs and PDNs, or we are displaying all categories of the PCNs and PDNs. So you have the possibility to filter here or set the filter. Okay, this wasn't a good example. So for example, I want to see if there is a discontinuance. There you go, you can see, and the category of the PCN PDN is also linked with a criticality. So that means if you want to see all that high criticality PCNs PDNs, just select the criticality and see all the informations you want to see. Same we're doing with the lead times. So we are generating lead times alerts if the lead times increase or decrease. So similar or pretty the same view as the others before. Again, an issue date, a customer part number, the where used function again, manufacturer part number, manufacturer, and the changes lead time from to, and also the possibility to filter to have the right information you need. So this was all from my end. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you could follow. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any question, feel free to ask them right now, and we are going to catch them in the Q&A.
Thank you all for the great presentation. And now on to our question and answer portion of our event. As a reminder, you can participate in the Q&A. Just type your question in the text box or click the Q&A icon on the bottom of your screen and then click the submit button. It looks like we have a lot of great questions. The first question is there a document for these APIs? We do have a resource list that should be on the right-hand side of your console, but also we can also send that to you, and Henry wanted to respond.
Yes, the documentation is available on the SiliconExpert website, and I'm happy to share a link with anyone who wants access to it. It should be in the resources tab as well.
Wonderful. Pete asks if there's an expiration date. Anybody have an answer for if there's an expiration date?
I think any one of us could basically answer that, but I will just take it on. And yeah, there is an expiration date. So basically, every agreement being either with the SiliconExpert API directly or through AMSYS Lifecycle Management Client is based on a yearly license fee. So what we do is we get updates through SiliconExpert during that 12 months period, and basically as long as the renewal comes in and so on, there will be updates and data will not expire, and you always get the latest updates each and every night.
Awesome, thank you. There was a question about what API SiliconExpert is using of AMSYS. I don't see it though.
To clarify, is the question whether they're using silver or gold, or is the question about whether the API is RESTful or SOAP-based?
I think maybe Henry, maybe we can answer it both ways actually. I mean, as far as I know, we are using the SiliconExpert Gold API to really, as you explained, to get all the data that we can possibly get out of SiliconExpert. So we get the obsolescence data, we get the forecast data, the environmental compliance data, the lead times, price indicators, the possible replacements and crosses from SiliconExpert, then combine it to an overall likelihood that any company or any customer of ours might encounter a problem. On the other hand, we then also take customers' internal data from their PLM or ERP system to define really critical components to implement also impact factors, individual impact factors, as I explained earlier, being based on, is there already a possible replacement in my bill of materials? Do I have enough stock on hand? How often is this item built into different configurations and so on? So then afterwards, and as explained, we get all the data from SiliconExpert through the Gold API to define all the likelihood, internal data. We define individual impact factors and then combine it to individual risks where our customers then can react on or proactively mitigate risk.
Awesome, thank you. Our next question is from Dawn, and I can take this one. Dawn asks if this webinar recording can be shared with people not on the call.
Don, within 24 hours, the recording will be sent out to everybody who's registered and anybody who's missed it. I think you can forward that recording, but they will have to go through the registration process to be able to watch it. So yes, it will be. We will also upload the recording onto the SiliconExpert website under the Knowledge Center webinars, and they will be able to access the on-demand version there too. That normally takes a week or so for our webmaster to get that part done. But yes, they can definitely watch it who is not registered or on the call currently. All right, our next question is, will the on-demand version be shareable with non-attendees? Yes, it will be. So Pete and Don, that is, if they have any issues, please have them contact us and we can help them with that. The next question is, regarding the RM module, does the uploaded BOM need to be in any specific format, for example, CSV?
Yep, that's a great question. So in the common way, our clients using Excel sheets like CSV or XLS, but it's also possible to upload your configuration via JSON file, or we are now planning to have the service to give our clients an API, so the clients have the possibility to push directly their data from the PLM or ERP system into our AMSYS LCM client.
Terrence, one add-on from my end.
Yep.
We do have standardized formats, as you explained earlier, and then different file formats, but also the data files need to be standardized. However, as I explained earlier, our application and also the import can be customizable. Have to be honest with that. There might be some non-recurring engineering cost in advance, but good thing is with software today, everything is basically possible.
Wonderful. So the next question for you, Bjorn. Alerts also work for mechanical items, correct? Rails, gearbox, etc.
So as I see in the Q&A box, the question is from Juan. I hope I pronounced your name correct. I'm not sure which industry you're working in, but as far as I see, if you're talking about rails, gearboxes, and so on. I mean, what we get from SiliconExpert is best in breed data for electronic components, also for standard parts, for connectors. So basically everything that falls into the commodities SiliconExpert is focusing on. For the inbox, this is what Terrence jumped over kind of little in his live demo. We do have the possibility to directly upload information from your supply chain, especially for special to type parts, only built for you, or other mechanical parts where we don't know any database yet, because they are most likely special to type only for you, for your organization, to then upload these information. And you will then also get alerts and email notifications in our inbox, and you can directly open cases from there and follow your internal processes. So although there is no direct API available, we are in compliance with international standards for the distribution of PCNs and PDNs, and digitize that process as well. I hope
Wonderful.
that answers your question.
Yeah. Juan, if you have any more questions or follow-up, please feel free to put it in the Q&A box. Matthew, yes, this webinar will be recorded for later viewing, and we will, you should receive via email within 24 hours a recording of that. It will also be on the SiliconExpert website within the next week or so for on-demand viewing as well. Ivana says, hi everyone, is it possible to implement a ROHAS document such as data sheets in AMSYS?
I'm taking this question. So if the part is not matched with the SiliconExpert's database, it is possible to add documents like ROAS conformity statement or data sheets. That's no problem. But
Yeah,
if the part is matched with the SiliconExpert database, so we are getting through the APIs all these documents.
Yeah, obviously, when the part is within the great SiliconExpert database, we get the latest RHS and data sheets, and even historical data sheets through the SiliconExpert API. What is a great function as well. However, if it is a specialty type item only for you, you can upload these informations into our application. So you have basically the best of all worlds from SiliconExpert and your internal data in one database. And besides ROHS, really hard to pronounce. Besides RHS information and documents, we even go beyond, and then you will even be able to add the latest rich information with the ADHDs and CAS numbers and so on to then bring out statements on overall environmental compliance on your products.
Great, thank you. We also just got another question, and it is from .fom, and he or she asked, do you have SPICE, footprint, 3D model, simulation model for EEE part type?
Ooh, maybe Henry, you can help here, because I'm only an industrial engineer, and I know you have so much documentation and the pictures and 3D models and footprints and so on as well, but maybe Henry, that's a question for you.
We have, I do not believe we have 3D model or simulation models. We primarily deal with data, not with the 3D elements.
Got it, thank you. Is there any other questions? If not, for more information related to today's webinar, please visit any of our resource links in the folder icon at the bottom of your screen. Should also be a folder to the right of the console as well. Within the next 24 hours, you will receive a personalized follow-up email with details and a link to today's presentation on demand. So thank you again for attending our webinar, Outsmarting Obsolescence, AMSYS LCM Client Application using SiliconExpert's API integration. Again, it's brought to you by AMSYS and SiliconExpert. This webinar is copyrighted 2023 by SiliconExpert. The presentation materials are owned by and copyrighted by AMSYS and SiliconExpert, and the speakers are solely responsible for their content and opinions. On behalf of our guests, AMSYS and SiliconExpert, thank you for your time and have a great day.